Oh, what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled History of Harlem, New York, which obviously I've heard of Harlem in songs and movies and all of that, but when it comes to the history or anything, honestly I have no idea where it's located exactly or what it's about. So without further ado, let's see what this video is about.
There exists a neighborhood that's a household name and has many layers of American history. Lots of people talk about its renaissance of the 1920s, but that's just one chapter in a much deeper story. Of course, I'm talking about Harlem, which
But Harlem is like right at the in the heart of New York. Bronx is over there? What? I've never really looked at the map of New York, honestly. Interesting.
is tucked in downstate New York between the Hudson River on the west and the Harlem River on the east. It's a neighborhood in the northern part of the borough of Manhattan in New York City. The neighborhood stretches from about 110th Street all the way up to 155th. 125th runs through the heart of it and serves as the main commercial spine. Central Harlem includes places like Astor Row, Strivers Row, and Little Senegal. To the west, you'll find the hilly terrains of Manhattanville, Hamilton Heights, and the prestigious Sugar Hill.
But Harlem is massive. It's like a whole city.
Then there's East Harlem, often called Spanish Harlem or El Barrio. Put all of it together, and you get Harlem, a place whose tale I'm going to try and wrap up. Long before neighborhoods and street grid.
To be fair, I didn't even know that New York was a state until recently. I thought it was just a city.
A giant glacier bulldozed its way across northern Manhattan during the last ice age.
Oh, we're going way back.
As the ice melted, it left a series of flat plains and also things like the steep cliffs of Morningside Heights. The Wecquaesgeek band of the Lenni Lenape were among the first known people here, farming, fishing, and traveling ancient trails, some of which would eventually become Broadway. They called the region Muscuta, which means the flat place. In the 1500s, explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano became the first known European to sail near the Manhattan region. Later, Henry Hudson explored the river that bears his name, and the Dutch started mapping the region. By the 1620s, they established the colony of New Netherland. A small settlement called New Amsterdam grew at Manhattan's southern tip, and Dutch officials famously, quote-unquote, purchased the entire island from natives. Early attempts at agriculture north of New Amsterdam often struggled or failed outright. In the 1630s, the
because of the weather conditions? But New York isn't New York like hot in the summer and cold in the wintertime?
DeForest family tried to settle, using the Harlem and East rivers to transport building materials and livestock. More settlers came, including Joachim Peter Koyter, a Danish sea captain who established a large estate. During Kieft's War in the 1640s, tensions with local natives escalated, and Koyter's farm was burned to the ground. In 1655, the Peach War erupted, once again destabilizing the fragile communities of northern Manhattan. In 1658, Dutch Governor Peter Stuyvesant issued an ordinance to establish the village of Nieuw Haarlem as an agricultural outpost named after a city in the Netherlands. At the time, it was a quiet Dutch village with less than a few hundred residents living in scattered houses and working small farms. In 1664, the English took over New Netherland, and the colony was renamed New York. The village became simply Harlem, though for a brief moment the British tried to call the place Lancaster, but it didn't stick. Dutch forces briefly retook New York in 1673, but the next year the English took it back and this time held on to it. By the late 1600s, Harlem had a church, a tavern, and the usual collection of farms and homes. A significant Manhattan slave revolt in 1712 highlights the brutal reality of slavery that existed even in this northern rural setting. Harlem, though, generally remained a quiet rural district of Dutch and English farms, mills, and orchards. In 1765, British officer Roger Morris built a grand country estate on a hilltop overlooking surrounding farmland. That estate would soon become the headquarters of George Washington during the coming Revolutionary War. In 1775, as colonial tension with Britain turned to open conflict, Manhattan soon became a target. In 1776, the British attacked New York in full force, starting with Brooklyn, where rebel troops under Washington retreated across the East River to Manhattan.
I wish there was like a video of time lapse of how New York grew from like farmland to what it's now, because it's so weird to think that there was I couldn't imagine New York as farms, you know? Like that would be so cool to see the process of like the buildings getting taller and taller and getting more modern and all of that. All of that just, I don't know.
In September, the British landed on the island, and American troops briefly halted their advance at the Battle of Harlem Heights. It was technically Washington's first battlefield victory of the war. However, the British soon took control of Manhattan, occupying Harlem for the remainder of the Revolution. After the war, Harlem resumed civilian life and was slowly rebuilt. Major roads helped connect the village to the growing cities of Boston and Albany. By 1796, Harlem had its first proper school, library, and would soon get a fire engine. In the early 1800s, it was still backcountry, though, a quiet rural retreat where wealthy people owned large estates and enjoyed things like horseback riding. One of those estates was Hamilton Grange, the only home ever owned by Alexander Hamilton. There was also Harlem Lane, a popular country road for carriage rides. Ferry services across the Hudson were established, and churches were popular social centers. Over time, iconic churches like St. Joseph of the Holy Family and Our Lady of Mount Carmel would form. In 1811, the Commissioner's Plan established Manhattan's grid of numbered streets and avenues, laying the framework that still defines Harlem's layout today. By the 1820s, a few thousand Harlemites lived here, still very much separated from the main city of New York that was formerly New Amsterdam. The Harlem River became an increasingly important corridor for moving goods and people. On July 4th,
Wow, imagine. That looks so pretty too.
1827, New York formally abolished slavery, though racial inequality persisted. Life in the 1830s was difficult, marked by a devastating cholera epidemic and poor sanitation. Infrastructure improved as old dirt roads were replaced by cobblestone, starting with 129th Street. Meanwhile, the New York and Harlem Railroad was chartered, and by 1837, the railroad reached the area, at first using horse-drawn rail cars. Suddenly, people could live in Harlem and commute downtown. In the 1840s, engineer John Bloomfield Jervis helped build the Croton Aqueduct, including the impressive High Bridge that carried water into Manhattan. In the mid-19th century, Harlem's open spaces made it a magnet for horse racing and other sporting pursuits. During the Civil War, the draft riots of 1863 affected neighborhoods across Manhattan, including Harlem. After the war, the neighborhood boomed, and the population grew to around 31,000, boosted by railroads and streetcars. New rows of townhouses appeared as immigrant communities, including Jewish, Italian, and German families, moved in.
See, can you imagine New York looking like this? For Harlem from the old fort in the Central Park. like, and then it progressively grew and grew. How wild is that?
The Panic of 1873, Harlem was officially annexed to become a formal part of the city of New York. Central Park was then completed at 110th Street, forming the southern boundary of what is now called Upper Manhattan. Economic recovery in the 1880s triggered another wave of construction and growth. Connectivity was enhanced by new elevated rail lines, the Washington Bridge, and the Putnam Bridge to the Bronx. The Harlem Opera House opened, and a new courthouse was built on East 121st Street. A recession in the 1890s temporarily halted development, leaving many new buildings vacant. At the northern tip of Manhattan, the Harlem River Ship Canal improved navigation between the Hudson and East Rivers. Then, the five-borough New York City that we know today was formed, with Harlem within the borough of Manhattan. That same year, in 1898, the Harlem River Speedway opened, later evolving into today's Harlem River Drive. At the turn of the 20th century, apartments packed the district, turning it into a dense urban neighborhood of about 200,000. Docks and freight yards along its rivers buzzed with shipping and rail activity. In 1904,
Everything was built pretty quickly as well, no?
1904, the subway arrived along Lenox Avenue, further linking the neighborhood to the rest of Manhattan. On top of that, the 145th Street Bridge opened, providing a new essential link to the Bronx. Real estate pioneer Philip A. Payton Jr. was busy actively recruiting black residents to move into Harlem. At the same time, cultural and educational institutions grew, including the 105th Street branch of the New York Public Library and City College of New York. St. Nicholas Park was developed as a major green space, but unfortunately, the neighborhood also saw its share of organized crime activity. In 1914, what would become the Apollo Theater opened, and during World War I, the Harlem Hellfighters fought with distinction. Later, Dorrance Brooks Square was dedicated to one of their own. During the quote-unquote Great Migration, many black Americans fled the South to escape Jim Crow laws and find opportunities in Harlem. Figures like Marcus Garvey led protests against racial violence, and in 1917, 409 Edgecombe Avenue was built as one of the neighborhood's first high-rises. When Prohibition hit in 1920, the area became famous for its lively and secretive speakeasies. This era saw the birth of the Harlem Renaissance, a cultural movement of art, literature, and music that reshaped American culture. Central Harlem became the epicenter of these cultural happenings, and legendary figures like Langston Hughes thrived. Venues like the Cotton Club featured stars like Duke Ellington, who immortalized the A-Train subway line through his music. However, the Great Depression of the 1930s hit hard, bringing layoffs, foreclosures, and deepening poverty. In 1935,
Is that Harlem or New York? Is that the center of New York, or is that Harlem? What Harlem look like? Looks very flat compared to now. And also, everything looks the same, no? Like, look at the buildings. They look like copy-paste, 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 copy-paste.
tensions erupted into a major riot. Despite these struggles, the Harlem River houses were built, and the area became famous for its iconic chicken and waffles. By the 1940s, Minton's Playhouse became the birthplace of bebop jazz, and World War II brought industrial jobs, but also further social unrest with another major riot. In the 1950s, the Harlem River Lift Bridge was completed, and it still carries today's Metro-North trains. The 1960s saw the opening of Sylvia's, famous for its soul food. Another riot occurred in 1964, followed by programs aimed at reducing housing discrimination and segregation. Malcolm X lived and preached in the neighborhood for years, but in 1965, he was assassinated nearby. Later, Lenox Avenue was renamed in his honor. By the late 1960s, the Black Panthers and other activist groups had organized chapters here, and the 70s brought a period of economic decline as residents moved away and many buildings fell into disrepair. The community struggled with gang activity and a drug epidemic in the following decade, but the 90s brought the beginning of major redevelopment projects, and with it, early signs of gentrification. The Harlem Historical Society was founded during this time, which you should check out if you're interested. Also during these years, for the first time since the Great Migration, Black residents were no longer the majority in the greater Harlem area. New retail development transformed 125th Street, and in the new millennium, the population rebounded, crime fell, and renovation transformed many once abandoned blocks. Jervis's High Bridge reopened to pedestrians in the 2010s, and that about brings us to right now. Today, Harlem remains a vibrant and evolving part of New York City. Like many urban neighborhoods, it has challenges, but if its history tells you anything, the place is resilient. Personally, I've walked around Harlem a few times, and as an upstater, the 125th Street train station is an absolute staple. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for watching this overview, and have a good one.
I mean, Harlem has so much history to it that you can't really fit it in a 15-minute video, can you, though? Like, you could go all over, on and on and on. But yeah, I found that interesting. I mean, history is always intriguing, and the fact that, you know, New York as a whole was like a farming land at some point is just wild. But either way, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!